The Todd Shapiro Show. Canada Laughs, SiriusXM 168.
How's everything going at the winery out there in Niagara Falls?
Things are bustling right now. We are sort of midway through harvest, and the whites are all in, mostly, and now we're working on some of the lighter reds. Today was Gamay and Pinot Noir, and soon we will start bringing in some of those bigger reds, which has been great, actually. It's been a good harvest.
Is the weather cooperating?
We could do without the rain. The rain is a little tricky right now for when they're trying to bring the grapes in, but we had a beautiful summer, and you know that really helped the quality of the grapes for sure. So everybody is pretty optimistic that it's going to be a good vintage.
Hey, do you guys ever have like an actual grape count, like per grape? Like, would you know how many grapes around? Like, is that an estimate your analytics people figure out?
No, they don't. They mostly figure out, you know, how many tons we're getting per acre, and then they, you know, that's calculated. They drop fruit to try to bring the quality up in the vineyard, and they work mostly on like a per ton basis.
How many tons per acre would you have? Do you like what's an astronomical number? This would blow me away.
That's a personal question, Todd.
Hey!
A lot of them they would crop lower to get that good quality, so maybe 2-3 tons per acre. That's on some of your nicer wines that you're going to produce. So you want to make sure you're not over producing, right? So the grapes will be a little bit diluted and won't have the nice flavor that you want.
Wow, that's so exciting, man. I love this stuff. When you give tours, do you show people, like, do you talk about the process of how?
Oh, for sure. When we built the winery, it's very open concept. So when you come in, you can see into the tank area, and when we do, tours, we want people to go right into the vineyard, and we talk about where we are right now with the vines, and then we bring them into the tank area where we do the fermentation and into the barrel cellar, and they get a pretty good handle on what is involved in making good wine, and I think they appreciate the process a little bit more than, not knowing all that info.
Yeah, I mean, that's, Brian, you're not a wine guy, Brian.
No, I mean, I don't. I appreciate the art of making wine. I know very little about it, but I like the whole wine culture, I want to be one of those guys that swirls around the glass and talks about noses and legs and... I had a 1998 blah, blah, and it was delicious. I want to be one of those guys. Plus, I love cheese, and the two go so well together.
They do. It's good to have good friends that want to share the odd bottle of wine with you, because then you don't have to go to the expense, but you get to share what they're having and learn a little bit, which is pretty cool.
What is the greatest wine you've ever tasted, Heidi?
I don't know about the greatest, but one of the most memorable was we were down in Florida at a restaurant, Burns Steakhouse, which is pretty famous, and they have a crazy wine list. And we had a 1954 Chateau Pavie, which is a French Merlot, and just having a bottle of wine from that vintage, like so far along, like you just think the history of where it came from and how it was stored. And the way and the manner in which they brought it to the table and presented the wine was so cool. And just to taste something, that was made from grapes and from that far back was like a pretty cool experience. That
is something. Yeah, you're tasting a little history there. And do you taste the age?
Yeah, the wine will change over time. It becomes lighter in color, and it becomes sort of different, like more dried fruit notes to it. But I don't know. It's just neat to see some of the heritage of where those wines are coming from, and even in Niagara, like if you go back, we were able to taste a Riesling produced from the 70s, which quite a long time ago in terms of the Ontario Niagara wine market, and what a cool experience that was, because it was still holding up and you could taste the fruit, and it's not a wine maybe I would drink all the time, but to taste the history, it was really cool and a great experience.
We're talking to Heidi Fielding, fieldingwines.com, or the longweekendwineco.com, a fun brand you guys have. How long? You mentioned the sort of the history of sort of the Niagara region. You're sort of in Beamsville there. How long has that sort of, what is the history? I've never thought to ask that. Like, what, in terms of when did wine start becoming popular within that region?
Well, I think sort of like our TSN turning point was just climate and getting past those years where people associate Ontario with like baby duck and those kind of products. So when you're thinking of like say the 1990s, you started to see a turning point for Ontario, and I'm speaking Ontario because I don't know as much about the BC wine region. Just that turning point where people were like, wow, these wines are just as good as international wines, and they started to win international wine competitions and getting recognized around the world was great for our area. People started planting the right grapes in their vineyards to make the right wines, and really showing a lot of promise and foresight into what they thought the wine industry was going to be like in Ontario. So I think when we opened in 2005, the Niagara wine industry was already thriving, and some really great producers coming out, and we have amazing neighbors where we are in the Beamsville Vineland area. So it's been a great ride so far, and I think it's awesome to see where the industry is going, depending on what's happening with all the the government talks in the next little while are going to be interesting. So
what I actually I'm sort of naive to that, but is that like trying to make the stuff more affordable or like?
Well, to make it more affordable would be a tax issue with the government. So
Yeah.
Of course we would always have our fingers crossed. The taxes have been raised, so you're seeing probably little price increases along the way at the LCBO to the consumer, and people are always like, why are Ontario wines or Canadian wines so expensive? And of course there's that tax issue. But for us, like, when we finally got into grocery stores, we thought, this is great. This is like going to increase our reach to the consumer. And, there's been all this NAFTA talk with the Americans wanting to get a piece of the pie in BC. And, I don't think we've ever had an issue finding an American-produced wine in Canada. But, I feel like we've always fought tooth and nail to get those Canadian wines on shelves and get them in front of people. So awesome that Americans are passionate about their wine industry, but I think Canadians, we could lead the charge in being super passionate about what Canada's doing, because we're right alongside with what every other great wine producer is doing in the world, and we should be like, what, they can be on the shelves, but we're going to choose that Canadian wine.
Yeah, I love that with sort of the longweekendwineco.com. It's got like that feeling. You got A in your tagline, like who doesn't love a long weekend day, stuff like that. And I think the cool thing right now, and you just heard the big debate Brian and I had, or a dialogue, simple conversation, is that there is the biggest sense of all of this is the sense of Canadian pride right now, and I think that helps everyone from even shows like mine to wines like yours. And I think it's sort of Canadians' duties right now also not to get so caught up in everything America and like support everything Canadian too. Like let's make sure we continue to have that pride and support great products within Canada. I mean, we can relate it back to comedy, and some people love this, don't love this, whatever. But sometimes Canadians will support American acts a little more than they'll support Canadian acts. And I it's the same thing I tell my listeners, like, support your Canadian comedians. They're absolutely unbelievable. And I would say just because they might not have that big name or been on a big, sitcom at some point that aired on NBC, it doesn't mean that they're not more talented in the room.
Yeah, Canadian television is is a perfect model for what you're talking about there. It's 99% American television and 1% Canadian. It's awful. But Heidi, how has Doug Ford's $1 a bottle plan affected your business?
Well, it hasn't affected our business. For us, I'd love to see the savings go back to the consumer, and for that to happen, I'm hoping that he looks at lowering our internal taxes a little bit. We'll see. I mean, there's still a lot of things they're looking at, so there's a lot of, not unrest, but we're hopefully optimistic on what's going to happen for our industry. I think it's a little bit up in the air right now. I think hopefully it'll go in a positive direction, but going back to what you're saying about artists and musicians and Canadian, I think Canadians have to really stand up and be like, you know what, we're super proud of what we're doing, and of course we're going to buy Canadian wine, and of course we're going to support our Canadian wine industry, not because it's just Canadian, but because you know what, it's damn good.
Yeah.
Like we should be so proud. We should be out there waving the Canadian flag and saying, sure, America, you can have this and that and bring this, and we're going to choose that from time to time. But 9 out of 10 times we're going to buy local.
Well, I know it was we got a quick call here, but we only got a minute left. No, just take the information. Tell me we can call back tomorrow. Sorry, Heidi. I know that the Chardonnay and the Cabernet were massive hits at the Oomph Lounge. So we're really happy that you. They went quick. I'll tell you that much. I couldn't believe it. People love their wine, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, it went really quick. So and I was asking everyone very personally, communication, and they all definitely were very grateful. Thank you for the support of the show, and of course we encourage people to go and check out Long Weekend Wine Co. or fieldingwines.com. Heidi, you're always such a nice breath of fresh air. You're a calming, fun guest.
Cleanse the palate,
Yeah.
Well, thanks guys for having us on the show, and have an awesome Thanksgiving weekend. Hope it's filled with a little bit of wine, a little bit of Canadian wine.
Well, how perfect, right? The long weekend's here, so go and support it with Long Weekend Wine Co. # Long Weekend Wine Co. as well. We appreciate it all. Thank you, Heidi. We'll catch up very soon.
Take care. Bye now.
Cheers.
The Todd Shapiro Show.
You are the greatest hero in American history.
SiriusXM Canada Laughs Channel 168.